We're live. What's happening, everyone? It's been a minute, as they say in the vernacular of the street. Hope everyone's doing well, and hope everyone had a wonderful Purim. And now we're about to hop right in to it's bittersweet, I must say, a bittersweet moment in our journey of our teaching and learning together this holy work that we've been doing every Monday night, teaching the works of Moshiach and preparing the world for Moshiach and redemption. So this is actually, and I say it with a heavy heart, the most recent and temporarily last words we've heard from our Rebbe. This sikha was given, excuse me while I get on my spectacles, just a little background because I think it's important, on Chaf Hey Adar Aleph, Parshas Vayachel Tov Nun Beis. That year, it was a pregnant year, meaning there's double Adars, just like we're going to have next year. In next year's calendar, we're going to have two months of Adar. And in that particular year, when the Rebbe gave the sikha, it was on the 25th of Adar Aleph, the first Adar. And when there's two Adars, that means Purim goes into the second Adar, not the first one. And that particular year, the Rebbe suffered a stroke on Chaf Zayin Adar, literally 2 days after giving the sikha. And it sent Lubavitch into a tailspin, and there was a lot of uncertainty, frustration. No one really knew what to do. And the Rebbe never regained his ability to speak at that point in time. And these were the last words we heard from our Rebbe so far. Obviously, we're anticipating the welcoming speech of Belak HaMashiach to greet the nation. It should happen immediately. But until then, this is it. And it's a very short sikha, believe it or not. It's probably the shortest sikha. No, not probably. It's definitely the shortest sikha in this entire sequence. And that's it. We're going to learn it and discuss it. And it's short and it's to the point. And just something to keep in mind that the sikhas of Nun Aleph Nun Beis, which God's help, we are starting up again next Monday night with Parshas Vayikra, which is the first sikha in the sequence, what has been come to known as the Var Malchus, the words of the king. So the very first sikha in the sequence was in Parshas Vayikra, and that was in Nun Aleph 1991. And the sequence of these sikhas goes through one entire year and ends up so it spans from Parshas Vayikra to Parshas Vayakel. There's no Pekude because the Rebbe at that point in time lost his ability to speak. We should say agreed to have his ability to speak be taken away, because nothing happens to a tzaddik without it being them acquiescing to it, their permission. They're aware of it. They're part of it. So what's interesting, just a couple notes to mention before we go over the sikha, is that the entire sequence of Nun Aleph Nun Beis sikhas, which lasted a year, cover every single Jewish holiday, Hasidic holiday, every single time of the year is in that time frame, except for one holiday, and that's Purim, because the sikha was given, as we said, on the 25th of Adar Aleph. Purim is on the 14th of Adar Beis, and the Rebbe lost his ability to speak. And so the first sikha from Nun Aleph that started in Vayikra started after Purim, and the final sikha, Nun Beis, ended right before Purim. So there's a profound message here to take away, because nothing is stum. There's no coincidences. There's no just, oh, well, that's interesting. It's exactly organized and planned by Hashem. So it's interesting to note that out of the entire year, the one period of time that was left out in this sequence of the words of the king is Purim. And we know that Megillat Esther is the only book of the Purim, of the Torah, of the Tanakh 24, that doesn't mention Hashem's name, at least explicitly. There's many references, al pi Kabbalah, of words that are referring to Hashem's name, but there's no clear mention of Hashem's name. And the reason for that is that's why it's called Megillat Esther. Esther is from the root of the Hebrew word Hester, which means to conceal or hide. And God hid himself during the miracle of Purim, and that was made it so profound. And that's exactly the message that we're getting from the fact of the sequence of the Sichos, that the Rebbe is letting us know that he's going into hiding, that he's going to be hiding until the re-revelation and Mashiach's full revelation and take us out of the galus. And for the time being, he's leaving us with this message. And I think that's enough introduction. Let's delve into the actual message. Okay. B'kvios kava v'kama shanim parshiyos v'yakal b'chudei heim l'chovres. So the Rebbe starts out by saying, and in many years we see that Parshas Vayakel and Pekudei are combined. That's like the same thing as this year. Right now we're reading Parshas Vayakel and Pekudei together. The Kaviyos Shana Zu, She Parshas Vayakel Pekudei Heim Parshas Nifradis. But in that particular year, Vayakel and Pekudei were separate parshas. They were not combined. And in this we can learn out a teaching and our service of God. So the Rebbe says the general service of a man is, as our rabbis teach us, I was only created to serve my master. In other words, that's why we were put in this earth. We're not here for our own devices and our own personal goals or enjoyment. We are here for a purpose, and that is to serve Hashem. And this is the general work in the world, which is we're here to serve our master. And the Rebbe said this is done in generally two ways, and they're hinted on in the names of the parshas that we're discussing now. Aleph v'Yakel. Shemegala b'kol inini ha'edam es avoda haklalis shemala mapratim. Excuse me. The shemesh el konam. V'alidei zeh poa achdus b'kol inini ha'edam. V'lachas kama v'kama b'nei Yisrael alidei ha'inin ha'hava v'achdus Israel. So Vayakel is revealing the general matter of the service in general, which is above the details, which is the general service of I was here only to serve my master. And this is done through the concept of achdus, or oneness, or collectivism, if you will. How much more so is this connected to the Jewish people through the matter of Ahavas Yisrael and Achdus Yisrael. In other words, every one of us has a general purpose and a specific purpose. The general purpose is to serve God, right? We have 613 mitzvot. For our non-Jewish brothers and sisters, there's 7 general commandments they have to follow. 7 laws of Noach, which are incumbent upon all of us. We have to daven, to learn Torah. There's many commandments that we have in our general service of Hashem. And all of these things come together in what is called as the klalit, or the general service of Hashem. And part of that general service, the Rebbe explains, is through Ahavas Yisrael and Achdus Yisrael, meaning to love another Jew and to unify and become one and collectively work together. That is the idea of the Yakel, the gathering. The second parsha, which is and oftentimes read together with V'yakel, like in this year, but not in the year the Rebbe gave the Sikha. The Rebbe says, after we start with this general concept, this general idea of what is my general service as a Yid, Why am I in this world? What is my general purpose? To serve my master. Then we move on, they revealing the specific details. How am I going to serve Hashem in my own unique individual way? What am I uniquely bringing to the service of God? Because if God didn't want each one of us to have our own way of serving Him, and I don't mean chas v'shalom contrary to the Torah, I mean in alignment, which, as the Rebbe said, we start with the general idea of serving Hashem by keeping Torah mitzvot, but then it's like, well, why is my retina different than yours? Why is my fingerprint different than yours? Why is my DNA different than yours? And it can't be that God created us as individuals, but He expects all of us to behave like robots and do the exact same thing that everyone else is doing. That defeats the entire purpose of having a multitude of different type of people. So the second stage is, what is my own individual mission in serving Hashem in the world? And this is the unique thing in that particular year. And that particular year, unlike most years when they are combined, the two parshas of Yaakov Pekudei were separate, and each one had their own week, their own Torah portion, and in a separate, in two separate learnings, in two separate parshas. It's just nice to have you. So yeah, that's the idea. They were separated that year. And therefore the Rebbe says we must emphasize the completion of the service of Parshas V'Yakel by itself, because it's separate that year. And therefore the Rebbe said this is revealing the importance of the general unity and togetherness in the world and amongst the Jewish people. And therefore the Rebbe says we're not emphasizing the details of the service of Pekudei, because they're not combined. So the message the Rebbe is giving is when they're combined, Vayakel and Pekudei, we're emphasizing both of those services together. But when they're separate, there's a specific message that God is sending us that's nogea or connected to that each individual parsha themselves. And how much more so, knowing what we know now, that the Rebbe lost his ability to speak a couple of days after he delivered this, and there was no Sika for Pekudei. The only time in this entire sequence of non-alpha base that there's not a sikh. So how much more so is the message the Rebbe delivering us the importance of focusing on the collective, Vayakel, on the Achdus, on the Ahavas Yisrael, and on the working together. And we see even more a connection to the unity by the reading of the Parsha Shekalim, which is was read at that particular time. So it's a famous question that's asked. Why does it say? Why is it written in the Torah? And 20 gera is a shekel, and you should donate half a shekel to Hashem. It doesn't make sense to say such a thing. Why didn't the Torah just say each person give esar gara, give 10 gara? Why does it say that the measure of a shekel is 20 and give half a shekel? Just say give 10. That's the measurement you want, Hashem. Tell us then that's what to give. So why specifically is it written? Specifically to give half a shekel, which is 10 out of 20. So the Rebbe said the explanation in this is the following: that when command Shemas half a shekel, yes. When Hashem is commanding us to give half a shekel, this is showing on the achdus, on the oneness of the Yidden, of Am Yisrael. Why? Because a Jew by himself is only a half. We're incomplete. And in order to become a complete shekel, a full shekel, a holy shekel, you must have another person. In other words, you can't be complete in and of yourself. And this applies to the unity of every one of the Jewish people. We have to have unity. We have to have achdus. If you look throughout our history, and this is just on a side note, a very common tactic. I was, when I first started yeshiva at 33 years old, 18 years ago, I was new to this whole concept of Chabad and Moshiach and all these things. And I started yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael, and I was talking to one of the Bachim, one of the boys in the yeshiva upstairs. And he started asking me these questions. Are you a Mashiachist? Are you an anti-Mashiachist? And so, what are you talking about? He said, well, in Chabad, there's two camps. I said, what do you mean two camps? He said, there's the Mashiachist camp, and there's the anti-Mashiachist camp. And I looked at him, and I'm like, I had no idea what he was talking about. But I told him, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. He's like, no, it's not. These ones say the Rebbe's Mashiach. These ones say against it. So listen. Don't you understand what's happening here? Apparently, you never really studied too much books on war, but number one rule in warfare, it's the most basic rule of any attack against your enemy. Divide and conquer. When you can separate people into different groups, you can control them. When they're together, they have power, and you can't. And just on a side note, by the way, that's exactly what the ruling class that are hiding behind the puppet that they put in as president are trying to do to America and to the rest of the world. They're trying to cause division. So how do we cause division? Left and right, Democrat, Republican, anti-life, pro-life, black and white, man and woman, just separate. And the more they cause division, they get people to fight amongst each other. In the meantime, they're behind the scenes. They're literally stealing your money. They're enslaving you. They're putting you into the worst holes of financial debt and all the horrible things that are happening, and you don't even realize it because you're busy arguing with your neighbor if he's pro-Trump or anti-Trump. It's insane, and people don't even see it happen, and that's exactly what they're doing. Dividing and separating. Righty, lefty, this one. Are you here? You're putting people in boxes, trying to find ways to cause separation. And what the Rebbe is saying now is that in order for us to be empowered is complete oneness. The very first thing that Haman Harasha, who was the seed of Amalek, came to the king and complained about the Jewish people was what? They're scattered amongst the nations. They're separate. They're divided. That was his complaint. Because that was what Amalek did. So this is how it works. The Yetzer Hara causes you to sin and then goes up in Shemayim and prosecutes you for the sin that he caused you to do. So, anyways, the Rebbe is saying now, we need oneness, we need achdus, because without oneness, we're incomplete. We're incomplete. Okay. And this is the fulfillment of the basic mitzvah of you should love your brother like yourself. And when it says re'echa, right? We have the recha chamocha, that you should love your brother like yourself. So what does it mean, your brother, your friend? It's not only talking about a yid that you find close by, but even someone on the opposite end of the world. In other words, you have to feel the pain of your brother who's on the other side of the world. I talked to people. I had lived in Israel for 4 years, and it's just nauseating. You see all these moron politicians and musicians and movie stars. Israel's an apartheid state. When's the last time you were in Israel? Please come to Israel. Let's go to Gaza. Let's go to Yerushalayim. Let's go on a tour. Let you see for your own eyes what's going on there before you start criticizing people. How dare you sit and point a finger at a country, the other end of the world, that you've never been to, that your entire base is based on baseless hate for something you know nothing about, because it's popular to bash Israel. So the idea is, I've spoken to Jews here in America, and try to talk to them about Mashiach, and they're like, I don't know, things aren't so bad for me. I've got a nice house, I've got beautiful cars, we go on vacations a few times a year. Mashiach comes, he'll come. But when you're in Eretz Yisrael and you go and you see your brothers and sisters having bombs falling on them and missiles and terrorists blowing themselves up on a regular basis and ramming their cars into little kids and mowing them down for no other reason other than they're Jewish, that needs to pain your heart. That needs to pain your heart to the point where you're saying, wow, even if my life is okay or good, as long as my brother and sister are in pain, regardless of where they are, we don't have achdus. We don't have oneness. We can't have redemption. We have to have this concept of unity, and we have to feel for one another, even if we're on the opposite side of the globe. As is written in the Tanya, every single Yid has a part of God mamish within us. And as a basic concept, which we say often, and if you catch one little part, you catch the whole thing. So if your dog is running away from you and you have him by his toe, you have the whole dog. Okay, you're only holding his toe, but you have him. So even though there's only a part of God inside of every Yid, it doesn't matter. It's God in and of himself. And therefore, every single Yid is one existence. This is the whole concept of Am Yisrael, of a nation. We already said that. We'll be here all day if I keep repeating the same sentence. Wow. I'm not here to cast stones on my brothers and sisters in Lubavitch, but did anyone focus in on this sentence that the Rebbe said in the final words that he gave to us before he concealed himself from our sight? And if you see your brother acting in a way which you think is wrong or undesirable or unfavorable or something that you think he should be doing differently, then if you wish to try to correct him or influence him, it must be done b'darchei noam b'darchei shalom, in a very peaceful, calm, and respectful way. Now, once again, the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach is a tzaddik. Nothing happens to a tzaddik without their permission. The Rebbe knew exactly in 2 days from this point in time that God would take away his ability to speak. He knew with 100% certainty that these were the most final and recent words he'd been delivering to us. And he knew with 100% certainty after Gimel Tammuz that Chabad would do one of these moves. And you would have half the people screaming, it's a test. Go look. Pick up the book of Daniel, Rashi 12:12. Look in the Zohar. Look in the teachings of the Arizal in Shar HaGilgulim. In numerous places where it says Mashiach will reveal himself, conceal himself, and re-reveal himself. Where do you think the Goyim got this concept of Yashka coming down and resurrecting? They stole everything from Judaism. It's a basic concept of one of our tenets of faith. So the people who are aware, who saw what was going on, knew it was a test, knew the Rebbe was still with us, and knew that, okay, now we have to kind of gird in our loins and we're going to have to steer the ship, knowing the captain is concealed, although he's still steering the ship. And then the other half totally lost it. And they said, what are you talking about? Our father is gone. They buried, God forbid, our Rebbe. What are we going to do? And an immediate machlokas broke out. And immediately you had this whole concept of separation. And the Rebbe said, I understand. You don't all have to agree. I understand half of you are going to be saying this and half of you will be saying this. And that's okay. Because there's room for both of your opinions. And there's room, if you do it in a calm way, in a peaceful way, in a respectful way, to make room for your brothers and sisters who have a different opinion than you. You can disagree with them, and you can tell them you disagree with them. But you don't embarrass them in public. You don't scream and yell at them. You don't ban them from your shuls. You don't do things that are the complete opposite of Ahavas Yisrael. That's the whole idea. Ahavas Yisrael is, you don't have to like your family members. You don't. You don't have to get along with them, but you have to love them in your hearts. You can't have hatred towards them. You can't look at them and cringe and wish bad upon the person. Say, you know what? I don't agree. It's not my place. I'm not God. I'm not your judge. I'm not your police officer. I'm not here to tell you, well, did you do this and did you do this? And, are you official? And who told you to say this? It's none of your business. Who told you to come and police me? When I was in yeshiva and I used to carry my Moshiach flag and I used to go Mitzrayim and all these guys screaming and yelling at me, this Lubavitch Pisher. Where did the Rebbe say bring a flag? Where did the Rebbe say put yichi? I said, where did the Rebbe say to spend your time and effort instead of bringing Mashiach, criticizing what I'm doing to bring Mashiach? What are you doing to bring Mashiach? Other than criticizing me. And they're like this. Nothing. Because people who are busy doing good don't have time to cast stones on others who are not doing good. People who are confident in what they're doing will continue doing what they're doing, irrespective of what's going on around them. So that's what the Rebbe is emphasizing. He's telling us, listen, you don't have to like each other's opinion. But don't have hatred for your brother. Don't have hate in your heart. Don't have rage and anger because you're embarrassed to do what they're doing. Stay in your lane. Alavai, find a way to work together. Find a way to, instead of figuring out what's separating us, what's keeping us together. And again, this lesson applies to the whole world. Look outside, look in the news, what's going on. It's nauseating. If I told you that if you trace the money back far enough, the same people who own CNN own Fox News, what would you say? It's called organized opposition. Every single message they're pumping into you is to control you and put you in a plate of cognitive dissonance where you're confused. Well, this side and that side and this side and that side, and vaccine and no vaccine, and COVID and not COVID, and they're just polarizing you. And the truth is always in the middle. Divide and conquer. So if our enemies are trying to divide and conquer us, what do we need to do? We need to unify. We need to, instead of looking at our differences, look at our similarities. We're all part of the human race. We all believe in one God. We all breathe air. We're all flesh and blood. Let's find things that unite us. I don't want to go too far off. And it's a short sikha, so we can forbring a little on the way. But when the Frierdiker Rebbe was in America, he called a gathering of rabbis from Reform, conservative, movements that are usually not in common with our belief system. And he said, listen, you have your ways of serving God. We have our ways. We may not agree with you and you may not agree with us. But there's certain core issues and principles that we should unite together. One of them being the security of Israel. One of them being fighting anti-Semitism. We're all Jews. So and he just couldn't get up the hop. They were just too stuck on their dividing points and of what's separating instead of coming together in commonality. And it's such a simple fix, but people are so stubborn and so egotistical and so caught up in their ways. The biggest, and I'll say it 100 times, the biggest avodah zara, idol worship in our generation, it's not money and it's not power, it's belief. That people fall so in love and so connected and so relentlessly hold on to their position that they shut their mind down from any new information. They refuse to hear it. and you'll point them to a book that's purple, and they'll tell you it's yellow until they die before admitting that it's not yellow. This is what he calls a closed mind. Once you close yourself, you're done. You don't grow, you don't learn in any aspect of life. You got to get uncomfortable. You have to. This is my training as a lawyer. This is what they teach you. You need to be able to argue both sides of the case. When you walk into a courtroom and you have an overconfidence or an arrogance how you're going to kick your opponents behind, something's wrong with you. Because if you're in a courtroom, obviously there's issues that are gray, or you wouldn't be in court if it was that black and white. You need to step out of your position, go into your opponent's position, look at the case from his perspective. How is he going to argue it? What are his points? How would he attack it? How would I attack if I was on his side? It's called having a balanced viewpoint. But people are afraid of hearing something that's contrary to their views. And that's the sickness that we have to eradicate. And we have to find a way to come together on things that we can all agree on. And there's plenty. There really is. There's a lot more things that keep us together than separate us. And the problem is when our enemies, and make no mistake about it, they're enemies, try to divide us. And again, I could go on for hours about this because I've studied and I've spent years as a hermit reading every single book on government and warfare and figuring out everything that's going in the world. And I'll finish with this and go back into the Sikha. The entire political system in America was devised by a German philosopher by the name of Hegel. Hegel, let's just say, I forgot how to say the teaching. His entire teachings are you control both sides of the narrative. You have a right and you have a left. You have a Republican and you have a Democrat. And you control both sides of the narrative. And by doing that, regardless of who you put in power, you can control the masses. Welcome to America. Here's your choices, this or this. Well, I believe some of the Republican stand positions. I believe some of the Democrat Republicans. What does that make you? Oh, you're independent. And no one cares if you're independent because there's no candidates for independency. So you're nothing. So pick right or left. The whole system is set up to fail. Anyways, that's my soapbox for the evening. Let's continue inside. והנה כהקדמה לפועל את האחדות בעולם ובין ישראל. יש להתחיל עם האחדות בינוי ובין קונו. And now the Rebbe says, and a preface, in actuality, to bring this level of achdus in the world and amongst the Yidden, is first to begin with achdus v'yakel between you and God. It's all right, I'll try not to say too much outside, but again, it's a short sikha, so we can forbring a little. Double remember the days when it was just me and him, and we used to do about 3.5 hours. It gets a lot, but there's a lot of good stuff here to go on. But you can't give to another what you don't have yourself, right? You can't show compassion to your brother or sister when all day long you're beating yourself up at how you're no good and you're not worthwhile and all your problems. If you spend your entire day looking at negativity in yourself, you're going to see negativity in the world outside. It's a basic concept in self-help and philosophy and therapy. You can't give what you don't have. So what the Rebbe said, God is many things. He's our creator, but he's also our mirror. The energy and the way we connect to God reflects the energy we connect to the outside world. I was having a conversation with someone today, and he was telling me about a drush, one of the rabbis that said in the shul over at Purim, that we have to have this. Everyone wants to have unconditional love and acceptance, but we have to unconditionally love and accept ourselves. Very true, because you can't unconditionally love and accept another if you have conditions on your love and acceptance of yourself. And in the same token, we can't expect to be a proper vessel and receive God's unconditional love and acceptance if our acceptance and love of God is conditioned. In other words, I'll keep your mitzvahs, God, and I'll keep your Torah, and I'll do what you ask of me as long as you keep doing good things for me. But when you throw me a curveball, God, when you make my life difficult, I'm going to turn my back on you. Well, guess what? You now just separated yourself from being able to receive God's love unconditionally. And now you've separated yourself from your ability to accept and give you love unconditionally and your fellow man. Because we have to love and accept God unconditionally too. And that means we have to love and accept all the crap that he gives us, that we don't understand, that we can't make sense of, that's hard, that's challenging, that's difficult, that at times we want to scream because we can't fathom why he would be doing this to me. And we have to have the inner fortitude to say, you know what? I'm breathing. I'm alive. I'm healthy. I have a roof over my head. I'm not starving. That's a lot to be grateful for, isn't it? No, we take that for granted. We get angry at the challenges. So everything is a mirror. And God's saying, yes, you have to have Ahavas Yisrael. Yes, you have to have love for your fellow. And yes, you have to have unity amongst each other and in the whole world at large. But it starts with your connection with God. You have to have a real relationship with God. And it's a challenging conversation to have. And I've had it with many people and many times in my life. And sometimes it got down to the point I'm like, listen, I don't know how else to slice this to you. And I'm not here to preach to you and I'm not here to tell you what to do. But you can't serve God in your own way. It doesn't work. You can add on some sprinkles on top, how you like it. But when God is saying our relationship, here's how our relationship works. Here's a Torah. Here's mitzvot. Here's commandments that don't make sense to you. But you want a real relationship with me? Here's what you need to do. Everyone right away. God's in my heart. I don't need to do that. I keep my own way of Shabbos. Okay. So guess where that relationship is? It's no different than a relationship of a doctor who's telling you you're very sick, God forbid, and you're going to die, God forbid. But if you take this medicine, it'll save your life. And you're like, okay. That's nice, doc, but I don't really need to do that. I have my own way. Who would do that? No one would do that. In 2 seconds, whatever the doctor tells them. Maybe not today after COVID, but previously. But yet when it comes to God, everyone becomes a genius. Everyone becomes an expert. Everyone right away starts having all of these, I don't need to do that. I have my own way. I'll do it like this. Or doesn't work. God is saying, I want to give you my unconditional love and acceptance. And I want you to feel the love and the oneness that I have to give you all of the time. So I'm giving you a map on how to do that. You don't want to do it. Okay. I'm not going to force it on you. But you understand? Anyways, let's continue. So the first idea is, in order to have this Achdus and Ahavas Yisrael, first you have to have this oneness with Hashem, as it is written, V'zehu gam echad bi'urim, but Moshe Kosu, as it is explained, one of the explanations, Esrim gera shekel mechetzes a shekel trumas Hashem, you shall give 10 gera, which is a half of a shekel, which is 20 to Hashem, as an offering. So in many explanations, when it's referring to this idea, the Rebbe put a little bit of a twist on it. He said, first, what it means is that you should get half a shekel, showing that you're only half without another yid, without your brother. When the Jewish people in general don't have achdus, you're incomplete, regardless of what's going on in your life. But now the Rebbe is saying, but to preface that, you have to have an understanding that you're incomplete without God. That the half a shekel coming from you, and the other half is coming from Hashem. And this is how to create the oneness of the completion. And therefore, every yid is a half, and the second half is God. And therefore, God enclosed himself in how many sfirot? In 10 sfirot. 10 commandments, 10 things God made to create the world, and 10 sfirot. Hu kamo eser gera. And that is half a shekel, 10. And every single yid has 10 soul powers. That's the other half. And then both of these halves together, God's 10 sfirot and my 10 sfirot, equals a full gera, a full shekel. Shekel HaKodesh. Now it's holy. Now it's complete. So what does it mean? Just like we learned that every single Jew, in the order of when we awake from our sleep, what's the first thing we say? Modani. The first words that we come up, Hashem will bless me. Hashem will bless all of us. That when we wake up in the morning and we pause and we go like this and we say, Modeh ani lefanecha, melech chai v'kayam, shekasarti bi nishmati v'hemet b'ad mumunasach. When we're actually saying, thank you, Hashem, for restoring my soul into me, for having the faith and belief in me to give me another day in your world, that I'm going to do the right thing. And because I know that I'm one with you in my core, that you will give me the power to do the right thing all the time. That we should internalize that message when we wake up and say, today's not a day for me where I've got to wake up in a panic because I got all this going on and oh my God, and this is past due and this isn't going to work and this is broken and this one's calling, this one. And pause before the day attacks us and really internalize. Wow, there's part of God inside of me. Wow, I have an opportunity to go into the world today and make a difference. I can give someone a few coins of tzedakah. I can say a kind word to someone, help an old lady with her groceries, see someone down, smile, give them a pat on the back. I can put on tefillin. I can put tzitzis on. Wow, I get to do mitzvahs. Like, imagine if we could keep that mindset all day long instead of instantly waking into the and I get it. Listen, I'm an extremely busy person and I'm nonstop all day long. But create space and know that this is really why we're here, and internalize the fact that we're one with Hashem. It's a very powerful meditation to start our day. And this is the general service. I'm one with my Creator. Wow. Because all this other stuff is details, right? Part with God, got a roof over your head, 3 square meals a day, paying your bills. You struggle, but you're paying your bills. No one's banging on your door and trying to repossess your stuff. Everything else is details. Money comes, it goes. You get arguments with people. Good day, bad day. Try to create that space. Talking to myself, the space to always keep inside the strength of the big things that really matter. And this is the general service before we get into all the details of the day that swallow us up. I'm one with Hashem. Wow. And this is the precise wording of the morning blessing we say. Modeh, praise, I'm giving to you. Praise, thanks. This begins with hoda'ah. Hoda'ah is my wife's name. Hoda'ah comes from acknowledgement, praise. And we were just finishing Purim. In Megillat Esther, what is Mordechai called? Mordechai Yehudi. It wasn't the tribe of Yehuda, it was tribe from the Benjamin. Why don't they call Mordechai the Benjamins? Because what is a Yehudi? Yehudi is a Jew. What is a Yehudi? A Hodah. It's someone who praises God, who acknowledges God, who knows every single thing that happens in your life is from God, who makes a relationship with God in your life. Lo im ani lefanecha. We don't start with ani lefanecha. We start with modeh, praise, acknowledgement, thanks. Mekivan shezeh hu shekol echad mechad v'zman Yisrael ma'ochad b'taklis. And this is every single one from the Yidden coming together in the ultimate oneness in HaKadosh Baruch Hu with Hashem. And this is a basic, simple thing. The Hagish Zois. Modeh. And this is the main thing that we're emphasizing. This concept of modeh, of praise. That's where we start. In addition to this, immediately upon our sleep, as the Rambam says, Hazman. שצריך לבויס ניור גם משין נויזו. בתיכה עבורזי שהוא חד ממש עם עצמוס ומחוס, שהוא חלק אלוהינו ממש. The Rambam is a very interesting concept. He talks about this concept of modeh ni lefenecha. It's not just when we wake up in the morning. We have to do this all day long. When we're thanking and praising Hashem, that we are constantly re-engaging and waking up from, as the Rambam calls it, from falling asleep in the hot air, in the vanities of this world. Often we need to check ourselves, right? We got to pause and be like, hold on a second. I'm one with God. There's literally part of God inside of me. I'm literally one with God. What am I worried about? Am I in control of my life? God's in control. Yeah, I need to do my part. But if I stress, and again, I'm not lecturing anyone. I'm guilty of all these things. There's a difference between knowing the path you need to walk and actually walking it. I'm working on it. But to just know and internalize and think about it, that you can't have two people driving the car. And the second God gets the wheel and we let go, and all of a sudden we panic and grab the wheel back, and we start getting nervous and stressed and worried and anxiety and pressure, God's like, okay, I'll move to the back seat. And if that's how you want to drive your ship, go ahead. But I can't be with you. Because the Shekhinah can only dwell in a place of joy. And when we're not joyful, the message we're sending above is, I don't trust you, God. I don't trust myself. I don't trust you. Because if I really trusted you, I'd be happy. If you really believe in your kishkas, that God is with you 100%, and every step you take, God is with you. And even if you fall, God has allowed you to fall so you could get back up again. And every single step is guided by God, and He loves you unconditionally. He is with you unconditionally. There's no reason not to be happy. But the second we get into that panic mode and that stress mode and that anxiety mode, it's not a punishment. When you eat non-kosher food, God's not punishing you. You're putting poison inside of your body. If you drink poison, no one's punishing you. You're putting poison inside. When we're worried, stressed, nervous, angry, whatever, God says, bye. I'm not punishing you. I can't coexist with you because God isn't stressed. God isn't angry. God isn't mad. God is happy. The souls up above are all smiling. There's no sadness in Shemayim. Don't get me wrong. God gives us some hard tests. And at times, there's a place for it. God forbid, a loss of a loved one, something horrible happens. Of course you have to mourn. Of course you have to be sad. But the general avoda on a day-to-day basis, and it's avoda, it's work. It doesn't come natural. Oh, I'm just not a happy person. What does that mean? Everyone has to work. This is avoda, this is work to constantly re-engage. Okay, and everything we said above is emphasized specifically. Excuse me. And everything about it is emphasized specifically. So when you see and when you see in recent years this concept of Yaakov gathering in the simplest sense, of all the Jewish people gathering, coming from around the world, moving to Eretz Israel. You see there's a tremendous influx of Jews at the time all coming together in Israel. we see that this is ein orich, that we haven't seen this type of activity in previous generations. The amount of olim chadash, new immigrants to Israel, the concept of the Jewish people returning to their holy land. ולהעיר שבראשינו שנעשינו לא היה באיגרת הקודש, בארץ הקודש, ואפילו לא בכבוד. And we see that even amongst our rebbes, many of our rebbes and our leaders, not only did they not even live in Israel, they never even visited Israel. וגם נשיאו כבוד הקדוש ברוך הוא מעדמו היה לפני שנמנע ממנו לקבר בקברי אבוס, the Rostov, the Lubavitch, וכו'. במיוחד במדנו בשנה שאחריה שלא היה תנא שנה נפלס בכל וכול. Now, before we saw such the Rebbe saying the idea that so many Jews are returning to Israel is indicative of this idea and this want and this desire for achdus, for oneness, because the land of Israel is obviously, when you have shlichot to do, the Rebbe says you don't live where you want, you need to live where you're most useful. That's why I was living in Eretz Israel, and I never wanted to go back, and the Rebbe sent me back here. I don't want to be back here. The truth be told, given my druthers, in 2 seconds I'd move back to Sfat. You could take my Aston Martin, my house, and all my stuff, and give me a little small house in the mountains in Sfat, and I'll be happy as can be. And take all the stress off of me. But no one asked me. The point is the fact that all these Jewish people are coming together in the land of Israel, showing the importance of this feeling of return, of this desire and this want to return to the state of oneness, to return to the land, to return to Hashem. And we see this in actuality in this week's Parsha Shkalim, where the encouragement of adding on and giving tzedakah. Because there's many ways the Rebbe said of giving tzedakah. Ma'aser, you give 1/10. Chomish, you give 1/5. And every single one gives according to their soul. The author Rebbe goes so far in Tanya to say that when it comes to saving your life to someone who has committed sins previously in their life, especially about chuvas, this concept of 10 or 20% goes out the window. You need to give everything possible to redeem your soul. For years, I gave 50% of my money to tzedakah because it was my way of atoning for so much of the things that I didn't do on purpose, but that I felt I needed to do what I could to fix up my soul. But at a minimum, the Torah says you give 1/10 of your money to tzedakah, and if you have a good eye, you give 1/5, because it's a similar idea to not working on Shabbos. You're trusting that God is, you're giving God what belongs to him. In other words, God's basically saying, I'm giving you your money, 1/10 or 1/5, 10 or 20%. You're giving back to me because I'm the one who's supplying you with your money. Yeah, you're going to work, but I'm allowing that vessel to take place. And therefore, when you give more tzedakah, it's a strengthening your trust factor with God. We're basically saying to God, I trust you implicitly, and no matter what I give, you're going to give me more. And again, each one according to the soul, each one has to have a mashpia to guide him in the right way. Under no condition should someone give enough tzedakah that they put themselves in debt, that they can't afford to pay their own bills. It's a different discussion. Anyways, and we must decide, literally in this Shabbos, that we must begin to set an example by giving, the Rebbe's very, very strong all the time before the holidays to make sure we give enough money, food, drink to those who cannot afford it for the holidays, that they should do it in a way of kavod, of respect. Pesach coming up. And how much more so we see in this week's Parsha Shkalim. That everyone was required to give this half a shekel as a unity together as a congregation. That each one must give, and this is how you draw close to Hashem. And in order for the person to draw close to Hashem, from all of them, they have to bring this offering. That's why Mechetzes shekel was incumbent upon everyone. It wasn't a large sum of money. It was representative of the fact that you're giving yourself over to God and to Am Yisrael as the part of the nation. That you're giving your existence back to God. Reminds me of the time when the Rebbe took over as Rebbe for a whole year. The Chassidim begged and pleaded with him. He refused. Say a mimer, say a mimer, say a mimer. There's all kind of Kabbalistic reasons why he waited to the following year, to the 11th year instead of the 10th. It's not the time to go into it. But the Rebbe literally refused his Nasias, just like most real or all real leaders. You see in other Hasidic dynasties, when there's a passing of a previous Rebbe, there's a war. Who's going to be a Rebbe? They're fighting. I'm going to be Rebbe. I want to be a Rebbe. It's the complete opposite of Lubavitch. The Rebbe is hiding from the Kavod. I don't want it. I don't deserve it. It's not fitting for it. Everything he could come up with not to be Rebbe. There's a story about a Sephardi guy in the dollar line. He went by the Rebbe one time and said, Rebbe, what is all this talk about you being Mashiach? He said, I didn't want to be a Rebbe either. This is a leader. Don't say, I'm the leader. So, anyways, when the Rebbe took over as Rebbe, after cajoling, the whole year of finally agreeing to it, he took over like a lion. And as soon as he became Rebbe, he sent out a telegram, a message, however it got out, to every Lubavitch institution across the world to take the star, to take the deed, the ownership of their Mossad, their land, their property, whatever it is, and sign it over to the Rebbe and send it into the Rebbe. Complete opposite of what he did before, where he said, I don't want to be part of, it's not for me. I'm not the chosen. And then when he got the stars, when he got the agreements from all the institutions, he sent them back. So now you can go back to work. It's just telling everyone I'm the boss now. I don't want to be the boss, but God chose me to be the boss. And now that he chose me to be the boss, I'm going to be the boss. And you're free. I'm going to give everything back to you. But always know you have a boss. And this is what the Rebbe is saying now, in such a way that the basic idea we have to start with all the time is to maintain kol metzius l'Hashem. The chetzet shekel, the half a shekel, is basically saying to God, I belong to you. This is showing that I'm incomplete without you. That my existence is you. My purpose is you. My whole reason for being and breathing and living is you. And God says, now I can give you more brachos than you ever imagined. Now you can be a vessel for so much blessings because now you're an empty pipe. You're moving yourself out of the way for me. I'm going to move others out of the way for you. You're surrendering your life to me. I'm going to open the path for you. And this we have to do in actuality. Everything we do, we give tzedakah, we do mitzvot, we have to enter all our soul powers into it. Be in it. Don't dilly-dally. Don't do it with all your being. And it must come to action in actuality. And through this, the Rebbe said, it will hasten the redemption. And then Hashem will surely give us tzedakah and surely gather all of us together into the one great nation that we are and bring redemption. And with that, my friends and brothers and sisters, we have once again completed the cycle of the Devar Malchus, the Nun base sequence, and long before we start up next Monday night with Parshas Vayikra, which is the beginning of the start of this sequence in Nun Aleph, we should have the full Isgalus of Melech HaMashiach. and we should be dancing and singing in the Beis Hamikdash Shlishi. God bless you to be one with God, to be one with yourself, and to be one with one another. Moshiach Now.